worship team. Oh, that was powerful. Every weekend, every Sabbath we come like, wow. Imagine just saying those words. That's one thing. We can just say those words. But when you have music and the voice, there's something about the soul and the spirit that get ministered to and ministered to. So thank you, worship team, for leading us in that. Ernie, would you mind pulling up, I was reading the Bible over your shoulder during study group, and you had the Message Bible, and you had, it was Luke 6, I think we were studying. I think it's 40, verse 45. I wrote it down, and I really liked how it was said. And there's a point in here where I want to share that. So if you can pull up Luke 6, 46 through 49 in the Message Bible. And at some point, have your phone wend its way up here. All right. So we are doing a series on love. Summer of Love, Summer Love. Sounds like the Grease Lightning movie. But we had part 1, the Kindness Superpower, last week, part 1, and now this is part 2. Part 1, we really showed how Jesus lived a life of kindness, and how he is not just our example, but he is our power supply. By when we connect with him, we're going to get into that deeper. But at the end of last week, I handed out and invited all of you to join me in a kindness challenge, a 30-day kindness challenge. And so I gave instructions to all of you, and that we can all follow. And for those of you who didn't get it last Sabbath, I have extra copies here, so I'll give it to you afterwards. But there are 3 simple steps that we are to do for this. So the challenge goes like this. Pick a person, pick someone with whom you want or need a better relationship with. Someone in your life. Could be your boss, could be your child, could be your spouse, could be your boyfriend, could be neighbor, whatever it is. So choose a person that you want or need a better relationship, and then for the next 30 days, do the following. Number 1, say nothing negative about your person, either to them or about them to someone else. Okay, that's first step. Number 2, every day, find one positive thing, at least one, that you can affirm, can sincerely praise or affirm them. About that person, and tell someone else. Say it to that person and say it to someone else. And then the third part of it is every day do a small act of kindness, of generosity for that person whom you selected. All right, so those are the 3 steps. Now that was last week. We've had 7 days to engage in that commitment. How's it going? Yeah? Have you guys been engaging in the commitment? Have you been trying? Yes. All right. Anyone have any feedback? We heard from Gloria. I loved her story. I wish all of us could be in that format that we had this morning in the study group. It was phenomenal. I don't know if you planned on doing that because we're doing the kindness challenge or what, but studying what we studied this morning. And then Gloria sharing about her coworker and how she's really engaging and trying this kindness challenge. I wish we could, like I said, have her preach this morning. Yes, Virginia.
I got my dad an apple pie yesterday.
Got an apple pie. Nice, lucky Mike. All right, anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, Nigel gave me hot peppers this week.
Was that kindness? Oh, okay. That would burn my mouth up. That was for you. Nice. Nigel, is Nelson your person? You were just being kind. I had someone else report they're doing it in their family. And, of course, they didn't tell the other person, this is their brother. And so one brother says to the other, you know, so how was your day today? And the other brother, he's like, what do you want? He's like, no, just asking how your day is. What do you want? You never asked me that. So be warned, I'm going to share a little bit about my own experience a little bit further down. But as we get started, again, if you are missing the instructions, if by somehow they ended in the garbage, I do have a copy. And I can give it to you. I should have done this last week, but I will attach it to the newsletter. So you can print it off on those days it ends up in the garbage when you get frustrated. All right, no. So as we do this daily, and I liked what Gloria said, every day, it's a choice, almost momentarily, moment by moment. It builds our awareness of how, not only of the other person, but how are we really doing on this love thing? How are we really doing? It confronts us. It's not always easy. We learn about ourselves, and we sing about God's love here. And especially that song, Reckless Love. We didn't sing it today, but we've sung it a lot. God's reckless love, because He just loves unconditionally and ongoing. We realize how difficult that is. But He calls us to not only have life, but have abundant life. And then He shows us what that looks like. He calls us, and if He calls us to an abundant life, that means He has a plan for how we can indeed have that abundant life. How? One of the ways is through kindness. And the thing that I referenced last week, and we're going to get into more this week, is research actually backs this up. Research gives us a clue that abundant life for us does actually happen when we are kind. Now, it seems like that can be counter to how we usually think. We usually, think that we will get fulfillment in life. We will get abundant life when we are treated better, right? When we are treated better. That's how we think initially. When in fact, research is finding that our feeling fulfilled in life depends far more on how we treat others. It's a completely different, flipping upside down the way of life, right? And yet that scripture comes to mind, the wisdom of God is the foolishness of man, right? Upside down world. So God and research show us that a path to a happier place starts with one choice. Will we be kind? Especially to those who are not necessarily kind to us. All right, that part who aren't necessarily kind to us, we see that more and more in our world today. We see kindness going on the decline. You turn on any news commentators. It used to be just sharing the news, the facts of news, what happened, what didn't happen. Now there's commentary and editorializing. Doesn't matter what channel you are on. And it's largely negative. So you have that. We see it in our politics, our political leaders. We see it in our civic leaders. Civility, where's that in the word civic? Not to mention in our text, our social media. How many times do you read something on Facebook or in our emails that no one would ever take that nature, that tone, or those words if they were face to face with the person. And yet there's a sliding happening on civility, on our kindness in our community. Entertainment. When's the last time you saw a show titled The Sweetest Housewives of Atlanta? Who would turn into that? Who would turn in? There is this ongoing, entertainment, this thirsting after watching people be mean to each other. Right? We see that more and more. We have built our own arenas of gladiator games. Remember the gladiator game? You think, how appalling that we gather and watch two men battle to the death. And yet in these arenas that we are forming, and every choice we make to participate in that behavior, in those thoughts and those words and those behaviors, we are building another stone onto those gladiator arenas today. So how do we embrace the kindness challenge? And obviously, the idea of doing this, not just for a week, not just a day, get by one day at a time, for sure, but we're doing it for 30 days. Why do you suppose they set up research-based to do it for 30 days? It stays. Habits are formed over time. The idea is not to end after 30 days. Done with that. Do we want a better relationship? Do we want to thrive in our heart and our soul? Then that's something as a way of life. So how do we keep going when it's hard? How do we keep going when it's going against the grain of our growing culture? How do we know, we talked a little bit about this in our study group today, when there are hard lines that need to be drawn? When respect needs to be there, when it's being violated? How do we know when kindness is no longer a good choice? How do we grow in becoming people of love, truly like Jesus? Well, the first one, we have it as we worship. We begin our whole inspiration here by rooting ourselves in Jesus, right? We root ourselves in the source of love. God is love. Everything about him is love. John 15 is the branch. We are the branches. The branch connected to the vine. God is the vine. We can do nothing apart from the vine. Don't even try. Don't even try. You want to be kind. You want to be loving. Get in with the source of love. Get in with that. That is where, if you want to keep trying strategies, wisdom, discernment, come from the source of love. So if you are entering into life, whatever aspect of life, your marriage, your friendship, your work environment, whatever, it will draw you into this battlefield. It will draw you and you will be tempted to relate in a way that is adversarial. You will be tempted to spar, to engage in less than loving ways. And so we have to make sure that at every juncture, we're saying, okay, God, I cannot do this on my own. Give me the superpower. Give me your power. Give me your spirit to fill my heart, to fill my mind, to fill my words and my actions. So we root ourselves in Jesus. And then we believe and we trust his words. That really kindness is that superpower. I was thinking about superpowers. You guys, there's so many Marvel movies out there, right? About superpowers. And each hero in the movies has a superpower, right? Well, they need to make a character on kindness. The kindness Marvel character. I don't think it's out there yet. But there are 5 reasons why kindness is a superpower, all right? The first one is it makes you bulletproof. All right? Kindness makes you bulletproof. So here's how. How many times a day or in our relationships do we receive emotionally charged bullets? Those words or those gestures or those nuances that somehow just trigger our buttons, push our buttons in some way, right where it hurts, right? And we get them. But what happens is when we predetermine, we make a choice that no matter what, we are going to be kind, even if they are not. Then what happens is we suddenly have control of our feelings. And when those emotional bullets come, we can have them bounce off of us. Because we have predetermined, made the choice, no matter what, I'm going to be kind to this person. It takes away their power to make you crazy. You understand? So bullets fly off. Number 2, it gives you X-ray vision. You always want to be a superpower? Here we go. Bulletproof X-ray vision. In research of thousands that did this 30-day challenge, they found the act of forcing themselves, these people forcing themselves not to be negative, to find and say praiseworthy things, and to be generous every day had this unexpected side effect. They were suddenly attuned and attuning to the other person's point of view. They could suddenly, without really intending to, they found they were putting themselves in the other person's shoes, seeing things from their perspective. This is how it works. If you are not allowed to be negative, you predetermine, and this is a commitment you're making, I am not going to be negative, you have to think things through a lot more, right?
Yeah.
What is their take on the situation? What their reasonings may have been. It becomes more about seeking understanding before you speak, so you're not tempted to be negative. Right? It makes you pause. How will my words come across to him or her? What might they think or feel because of what I say? For example, there was a wife reported this ongoing argument she had with her husband. And again, a lot of marriage is this incredible lab, all right? The worst of the worst comes out in marriages. So, but then you can extrapolate that to any relationship. But here we go. The wife and her husband had this ongoing fight about tax return spending. They got their tax return back. She thought, looking at their finances, they need to be saving that. He went ahead and spent it without telling her. All right, so she, a long time ago when that happened, gave him the riot act, not happy about it. While she's reviewing a couple months later, the bank statement sees another purchase that she hadn't known about that was from that tax return. And so she looks at him very frustrated, she's like, bad decision, bad decision. And he just looks at her, he throws up his phone, he's like, why do you keep doing this? You already told me I made a mistake. I already feel bad about it. Why are you bringing this up again? And boy, there they go. Well, immediately she remembers, kindness challenge. You just messed that up. You're not supposed to be negative. So she takes a moment, she pauses, and she relates how as she started pausing and saying, okay, how could I have done that differently? She suddenly felt terrible. She saw herself through his eyes. Here she goes again. Here she goes. She must really think I'm irresponsible. She must really think I suck if she's bringing this up one more time, right? But she realizes as she's thinking that through, that's the furthest thing from the truth. While they don't agree on finances, and that is their point of conflict, he is a great husband. He is a wonderful father. He makes hard, he goes out of his way to provide for them. And so she goes back to her husband and she apologizes. I am really sorry. I know that you care about our finances, and I know that you care about our family. You work hard, and I really appreciate it. And the report says that it got his attention. Now, this was not what he was expecting, given the past pattern. He actually sets his phone down. His walls are coming down. She wasn't talking to a brick wall anymore, and they had this great conversation because he knew that she saw his heart. Because of her being willing to pause, reflect, and redirect, right? She saw his heart. So when we talk about a superpower of how things work, we see that it does indeed give you X-ray vision. When you pause, you can see the other person's perspective. Number 3, kind of along those same lines, kindness melts through walls. Kindness melts through walls. You take that above difficult relationship, walls, if you have an ongoing fight going on, walls are already up, not much is getting through, right? Walls go up because they're a natural defense from getting hurt again. That's why walls go up. And so they want to be protected. They want to protect their hearts against arrows of anger, sneers of indifference, jolts of sarcasm, criticism, micromanaging, judgment. So the walls are up. But what happens when you change your course? You're now actively kind to someone who isn't kind to you. It starts to melt down those walls, especially when it comes from an unlikely source, right? At first, they're going to be suspicious of it. Be warned, they're going to be suspicious. But as you are consistently kind, then suddenly this tension, you're like a tug of war, tension, tension, tension. Suddenly, you let go of the rope. Causes disequilibrium, right? Causes a change in the status quo. What happens when disequilibrium happens? You let go of that tension. You let go. Change happens in disequilibrium. Change happens when you mix up the status quo. You reverse the energy that's there. Suddenly, there's nothing to fight. There's nothing to pull against, right? Change happens. What happens is then it takes a lot more work for this person as they're constantly finding you are kind to them. You are showing love. It's harder and harder. They have to do more work to build up their walls again. They have to work harder to do that. And the longer and more consistent we are, they begin to trust that you really mean what you say. But that happens over time. Consistently, they believe that maybe we aren't going to shred their hearts again. And they have hope. And eventually the walls come down. It's a superpower. 4, we have 5 of these. 4, kindness makes the invisible visible, right? Great superpower to have. Here's how it works. You've heard this adage, what you focus on, you will see, right? What you focus on in a relationship, what you focus on in a person, you will see. And the more you focus on it, the more you'll find it. So if you're focusing on negative, how much they're screwing up, what they're doing wrong, the more you focus on that, the more you're going to see what they're doing wrong and how they're screwing it up. But when we start looking for ways to be kind, when we start looking intentionally to say, how can I affirm, we start to look for positives, that I can say something positive about them. How do I say this in a way that's not going to hurt their feelings? How do I word things? And suddenly positives stop popping up more and more. We never saw them before. We start to see the good that was just as much there as any time before, but we just hadn't seen it. Kindness opens our eyes. And isn't that interesting? One of Jesus' favorite sayings was, for those who have ears, let them hear. For those who have eyes, let them see. And see through the eyes of love. And 5, kindness keeps powering you. Kindness keeps powering you. Imagine a superpower hero, right? Imagine a superpower that made its host better and faster the more the host used it. All right? The more you use that power, the better you get, right? This is what kindness does for us. As we apply kindness, we will enjoy life more because we're focusing on the positives of life and we'll want to be more kind in other situations and with other people. I found this just in this week. And I don't know, those of you who are practicing, you probably relate this as well. You know how you have empty medicine bottles and now there's a whole push on don't just dump it in the garbage, but take it to a medicine drop-off place, right? Really cool. So I saw, and it is hard to find those, really hard. And so I looked it up and I drove to one place and that said it was on the internet, but no, it wasn't there. And I looked at another place and no, they didn't have it. So I look up and it said a sheriff's office in Altamont Springs. So I'm like, okay. This simple, nice to the environment task has become quite difficult, but I'm going to persevere. So I drive to the sheriff's office, I walk my bags in, there it is, a med bottle drop-off. So I go right there, there's 3 or 4 officers behind glass watching me. I go to open it, I put in 1 or 2 little bags, I have a whole bunch more to put in, I close it, and I go to open it again to put more in, and it's not opening. It is not budging at all. So I try, it's not working. So I go over to the window and I say, it's not opening. What would you like me to do with the rest of the bags? And this not so gracious lady, police officers are supposed to be kind, but she's like, well, it doesn't work, and I don't have the key, and I can't take your medicine. Okay, well. Is there another place? Or, yeah, I'm sure there's another police office station you could take them to. And she was back to her conversation. And this other guy came out and he was trying to see. He was like, no, it works. And do you have a key? No, I don't have a key. And she was just like, brushed it off, didn't care. I'm thinking, you have no idea how hard I've worked to be kind to our environment. And so I wanted so badly, I'm afraid I did a little. I gave her a look and I gave her the cold shoulder and I walked out. Now, I could have done a lot worse, right? But as I'm walking out, 30-day kindness challenge, 30-day kindness challenge, your whole spirit was not kind, Denise. And suddenly, even though that sheriff was not my person to be kind to, it started triggering, right? Kindness is not just for the one target you're thinking about. Kindness is on every level. So we start to be aware, and hopefully if we respond to that, I'm more aware next time I go in, how could I have done that differently? This seemingly gentle quality, the simply gentle quality called kindness has this explosive power when we put it into practice. No matter if it's with the most benign person in our life or the deepest person in our life. It will transform not only others' lives, our relationships, but transform us. Jesus, of course, is our number one superhero, and he showed us how this works. Titus 3, 4, and 5 says, "But when the kindness and love of God our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of the righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy." Well, before we go on, we're going to end this sermon on a positive. We're not there yet, but I want to ask the question, because it's got to be a question that we're all asking at some point. Is kindness ever the wrong approach? Is kindness ever the wrong approach? We know in relationships, kindness is not the only quality that's needed to keep a relationship going, right? We need listening, we need affection, we need loyalty and trust and a whole lot of other things to make a relationship work. Sometimes when those aren't in place, we have to approach and deal with it, right? We have to deal somehow to get things back on track. Take, for instance, you take your car to a car repair shop, a mechanic, and what does he do? He lies to you and he rips you off. And you discover he screwed up your engine or he screwed something up. Go to Dawson next time, because he's the best. But this mechanic lies to you and ripped you off. So this is a little situation where perhaps a little confrontation, little reality check might be helpful, right? Righting the wrong. And you can apply this to any challenging situation. What do? You confront. You deal, right? But the question is, are you kind or unkind when you confront? It's not a question of not dealing with it. It is, are you kind or unkind when you do? With the mechanic, he's already ripped you off, right? So why let him rob you of your emotional health as well? How do you approach it? We handle difficult situations and people with as much kindness as possible. Romans 12:18 says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, depending on Christ, live at peace with everyone." All right, just to clarify, kindness is not the same thing as being nice, keeping the peace, not rocking the boat. It is not the same thing. Nice, and I'm going to define nice as a shallower type of kind. All right? When nice, just being nice to someone is our goal. When that alone is our goal, we can easily avoid conflict because our priority is in keeping a pleasant atmosphere, not rocking the boat rather than addressing issues that need attention. We can hide behind what we want to hide behind sometimes, right? Kindness, at its greatest, kindness uses nice words. Kindness uses a nice spirit. But kindness at its core cares about the best interest of others, so it does not shy away from challenge. It cares about the deeper core of the relationship, so it does not shy away from confrontation, but confrontation in love and kindness. If you have an adult child who is addicted and needs help, that's a situation that needs that stronger core of kindness. If you have a colleague at work who is inconsiderate, harsh with the rest of the office, that creates a disharmonious atmosphere that needs to be dealt with. So as a parent or as a boss or as someone who cares, we can't keep ignoring what is clearly hurting them or others. So here's the core tell though. If you know, seeking God, if you know that something must change, not for your sake necessarily, but for theirs and for the greater good, to be unclear, to avoid is unkind. Strength of love, the strength of love prevents unkindness happening to other people, right? So again, the question is not whether or not should I dive into a difficult situation. That is fear. That is shrinking back. It says faith does not shrink back in Hebrews, right? It's not a question of should or should I not dive into a difficult situation. It's rather, Are you kind or unkind in how you go about it and express it in the process? Kindness is not about self-protecting. It's about self-sacrificing, right? And so a good checkpoint before we deal with that is, are we doing this for my own self-protection, or am I sacrificing for the greater good? We have to find ways to be kind. Kindness does not come naturally to us. Kindness does not come naturally to us, especially when it's with those who are difficult in our life. It's not in our genes as much as we like. Take Rachel and Jim, for instance. Rachel and Jim were dating. And as she was getting to know him, his family, she was very impressed by how much his parents loved each other. And so she mentioned this one day to Jim. She said, they're so thoughtful. I mean, your dad even brings a cup of hot coffee to your mom every morning in bed. Wow. Well, after time, Rachel and Jim were engaged, and then they got married. And on the way from the wedding to the reception, Rachel again remarked on Jim's loving parents and even the coffee in bed. And she asked him, does this run in the family? And he says, it sure does. I take after my mom. Wake up call. All right. Kindness, that's a joke, by the way. I don't know Jim and Rachel. Kindness doesn't happen naturally. That's the point, right? It is why, because it doesn't happen naturally, when we are busy, when we are go and stressed, when we're not sure how to handle a situation, when that's on a downward spiral, it is why we revert so easily to what's familiar, to what's easy, to what's comfortable. And our default in our hard relationships too often is inertia, is doing nothing, hoping somehow it'll take care of itself. Think about other things that don't happen naturally in your life. Things that don't happen naturally but are crucial to our day-to-day ability to keep functioning in this world, right? Filling your car up with gas. Getting groceries so you can eat. Getting your homework done so you can graduate. Changing the baby's diapers so it doesn't stink. Paying your rent so you have a place to live, right? All of these will cause pain in your life if we don't take intentional, purposeful actions. Every single one of them. We need to add kindness to that list. Kindness to the list of essentials for our life, for a deeper, fulfilling, lasting relationship. We have got to make intentional, purposeful choices in how we are kind in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions. So this is the point where you might want to take a few notes. If you haven't yet. There's pens. I've got some paper here if you need them, if you don't have like that brilliant memory, photographic memory. All right, so here are some practical, and I'm gonna just pass out. If you need paper to take notes on, or if you didn't get the kindness challenge, take one, pass it along. If you already have one, or if you have a photographic memory, pass the paper along. I didn't bring any extra pens, so I don't know, write in blood. I don't know. If anyone has any extra pens, you can share them. So, okay, as this is coming around, I'm going to keep going. So the 3 steps are mixing the negative, right? No negative talk to the person or to another person about that person. Number 2, well, we'll get to the next one, the praise for affirmation and acts of kindness. So the first one, mixing the negative. Don't be negative to the person or to someone else. Now here's the really cool thing, neuroscience, the science of the brain. Heidi knows all about this. Research backs up that this is key. Nixing negativity is key. It's demonstrated conclusively that the choice to limit negativity and increase positivity, being positive, has a clinically, measurably positive impact on how we feel. Regardless of the impact, which it will be positive on someone else, it impacts how you feel about yourself, about the other person, and about life. Clinically researched. We tend to think when we're frustrated, When we're angry, we just need to vent it out a little bit, right? We just need to get it off our chest, like letting the steam out to avoid boiling over, right? The pot boiling over, you gotta let the steam out. Research says no. Ohio State research, as a matter of fact, they did one study that showed expressing anger, in anger, not as a healthy, productive expression, but expressing in a negative way. Expressing anger actually further activates the anger system in our brains. So instead of diffusing the situation, it increases the anger feelings in that system in our brain, right? So instead of boiling over, what it's saying, put the lid on it and take it off the heat, right? Feelings are indicators, not dictators of what we do. They are indicators that something needs to be addressed. So your anger feelings, your frustrations, listen to them. Your body, your brain is telling you something, but it doesn't tell you how to act. It's not saying how to spew out. It's saying something needs to be addressed, not that we address them in a negative manner. We have a choice on how to address the issue, not to hurt the person, right? So we put the lid on the pot, we remove it from the heat. Sometimes that means you need to pause in the midst of that situation. Sometimes 3 minutes. 30 minutes, get your breath back, get your brain back, get you calmed down, get the boil down. Sometimes it's 3 hours. If it's longer than a short period of time, if you know that you need some time to let it simmer down, tell the person. Say, I want to talk about this. I can't right now. I need to calm down so we can have a productive conversation. That goes a long way, other than just walking away. Walking away says a whole different message. Says, I don't care enough to stay engaged. So if you can say, I need to step away, I will be back to have this conversation though. People can respect that. They know you care, right? And then when you step away in the midst of the heat, step away, think about the purpose of your speaking before you go back to speak. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just wanting to prove that they suck? Are you wanting just to prove that you're right and they're wrong? Or are you trying to improve the relationship? It will affect how you address the issue or the person. But understand this, and this is key. Put a little star by this on your notes. This is key. You cannot accomplish both of those purposes at the same time. You can't tell them how much they suck and think you're going to work on the relationship at the same time. And it will make it harder to get to the working on the relationship part. You can't go to prove that you're right and they're wrong and expect to improve your relationship and have a productive conversation. So some common negatives that we may not realize are just as damaging as pointing out wrongs or speaking negative words. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Some of those will speak very personally to me, well to you. Exasperation and irritation. Rolling of the eyes, letting out a sigh, tone of voice. All of that conveys you're an idiot and I'm annoyed with you. Right? Just as damaging. Just as damaging. Number 2, sarcasm or semi-disparaging teasing. Now what I mean by that, I grew up in a family that gave each other a hard time all the time. Joked, teased. I mean, you would listen to us and you would think, man, what's wrong with that family? I grew up in a family that joked and teased. Sarcasm, all of it. Fun, humor, wit, that can be good. With a caveat. That is only healthy and positive if all parties involved are 100% convinced that you care about them. Not just generally, but in that moment as well. In that moment. But you have to be careful. All of us have to be careful when we're exercising sarcasm or teasing. We have to be careful. If any topic is questionable, if there are trigger points or push buttons or phrases that will somehow, set off a button, any kind of a negative hint, If you employ teasing or sarcasm in the midst of all of that, it will make the situation worse. We've all been there. You know what I'm talking about. You have experienced it to yourself, and you've experienced delivering it. I'm quite certain, because we're all human beings here. All right, so the third one is grumbling. You may not say anything negative directly to the person, but you just grumble under your breath, or you talk all around it about how this is not good. Things need to be better than this. They just need to be better. That kind of ongoing negative environment you're creating comes through grumbling. Now the fact is, again, let me emphasize, there very well may be, and likely are, concerns, irritations, hurts, and worries that legitimately need to be addressed. Absolutely. Maybe they've been agreed upon and they're being ignored. What this 30-day challenge of kindness is helping us to become aware of, it's not how to avoid those things, but what is our pattern of response in the midst of them? How do we deal with it in kindness? Being happy is not about having everything you want, the way you want it, all of the time. This is especially needs to be said to people that are perfectionists, control freaks, type A personalities, right? And I admit I'm one of those. So this speaks very much to me. Being happy is not about having everything you want, the way you want it, all the time. Being happy is learning to appreciate what you do have and being thankful for it. Doesn't mean you ignore the other, but it means you address it in a thankful spirit, in a balanced spirit. Rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. And as we said before, the more we focus on the positive, what happens? The more positive we're going to see. All right, so I like Reggie's words, collaboration. That's how we're going to solve this, collaboration. That's how you have healthy dialogue, was in collaborative solution seeking. That, listen to this, honors and respects their personality and preferences just as much, not just having them honor and respect yours. It is a collaborative effort between. All right, so the second one that we have is praise and affirmation. So that's negativity, right? The first thing on our list of the 3 things we do in our 30-day kindness challenge, nix the negativity. The second one is praise and affirmation. Now, married couples, people who have been married or people who are dating, I listen particularly. Again, you can extrapolate, though, to other relationships. In this challenge, the research that they did with the thousands of participants, they had a few dozen men and women who disclosed they rarely or never praised their spouse before this challenge. All right? But listen to this. At the end of this 30-day challenge, when they were giving praise, at least one praise and affirmation a day, all metrics of their relationship improved. Self-reported metrics, they were happier in the relationship, and they felt it far more likely that their relationship would last a lifetime. This is what they reported. The most gratifying result, however, was the ones that participated in the challenge. The ones that did it. Their spouses, their partners did not know they were doing this challenge, right? The ones who were doing all the work, 3/4 of them felt more loved and appreciated in their relationship. They were the ones doing the work. The other one had no clue. But the fact that happens in that environment. Participants across the board, doesn't matter, across the board of this challenge, after they finished, I mentioned this last Sabbath, after they finished the challenge, 74% said partners had changed for the better after doing these 3 things. Those who had rarely to never affirmed or praised in a relationship, that number jumped to 92%, so that their relationship had changed for the better, that the other person had changed for the better. Pretty incredible statistics, all right? As mentioned before, it's about building awareness. So to say at least one praise or affirmation a day, it wakes us up to the good that's been there all along. If you weren't looking for it, I guarantee you weren't seeing it. If you weren't looking for it, you weren't seeing it, I can guarantee you weren't saying it. So this builds awareness as to that. Humans, as we are, we tend to focus on what we don't have. That's natural, that we tend to focus on what we don't have rather than on what we do. So this is a powerful step in reversing that. So praise and affirmation, it's more than just saying, hey, good job. Good job. It's about finding whatever makes your person feel affirmed, and that's key. It has to be sincere, has to be genuine to be meaningful. You can thank them for ordinary tasks if you genuinely appreciate it. Yeah, see that. You notice good things about them. So guys, here's a little data that might be helpful either in your relationship now or your relationship to be. In most cases, it showed that guys adore their wives. All right, in this research, and again, it was nationwide, it was over thousands of participants, most cases show that guys adore their wives. But you also tend to assume that they know that. You tend to assume that they know that. While research on women shows 8 out of 10 women in a nationally represented survey, apart from this challenge, 8 out of 10 women have inner doubt that makes them wonder, is he glad he married me? And would he choose me all over again? Yeah, oh, that's right. Guys, listen up. All right? Now here's another interesting little comparison. Men tend to think that the hard work that they do to provide is the most tangible expression of how much you care. You provide to show you care, right? You take care of things, you do things. The surprising statistic, though, is that the action that most tangibly says, I care about you, to women, is your presence. Now think about how that goes together, right? Work is appreciated. Your providing and making money is appreciated. But it also takes you away for hours. And so you have the opposite effect happening, unless there's verbal affirmation taking place. The point is, no matter who you are or your relationship, what relationship, we have to understand and learn what matters most to each other. That means a conversation. This is what speaks love to me. This is what shows me you care. A guy and a girl having this conversation. It's going to look different for each of you. Back to some stats. Men statistically, now this is statistically, so you may vary, of course, but there's going to be some core things here, some core values. Men are most affirmed. This is ladies, listen up. Men are most affirmed by praise that says you are good at what you do. I respect that. I respect you. And, no surprise, affirmations say you are desirable. That physical, right? We won't get into that anymore. Women are most affirmed, not by those things so much, although it does carry over, certainly, it's not carte blanche, but women are most affirmed statistically by praise that says you are special because of who you are. You are lovable and beautiful. And you mean so much to me. You mean so much to me. You see how there's some differences here. So when a woman says, thank you for always filling my car up with gas, that typically to a man says, I love you. Right? When a man says, I cannot believe I get to be with you. I cannot believe you are so beautiful to me. When he pauses in the middle of the day or in the middle even of a disagreement and goes over and gives you a genuine hug that just says, no matter what we're going through, I care about you. It is far more meaningful than saying, thanks for doing the laundry. You see? But we can see how easily we go with what feels natural, right? What feels natural, what's easy for each of us, and again, why we need to learn what the other person needs. So here's a tip. The research shows if we want the person that we care about deeply to do more of what we love and less of what drives us crazy, we need to shift away from whatever we are doing, saying, acting, that seeks to manipulate them, criticize them, or otherwise try to move by force them onto a different path. And instead, practice kindness in our words, in our acts, avoiding negativity and affirming the good in them. It changes us and it impacts them. You've heard Einstein quoted as saying, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And this is where the Message Bible, Ernie, comes in. Do you have it?
What verses?
Oh, no. Luke 6, 46 through 49.
Why are you so polite with me?
This is God. This is God speaking. Why are you so polite with me?
Yes,
Saying,
sir.
yes, sir.
And that's right, sir, but never doing a thing I tell you. These words I speak to you are not mere additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundation words, words to build a life on.
That's good. We're going to end there. We say, yes, God, we get this. Good information. Great sermon. But if we don't do the things that we're hearing, he's like, you're missing out. These are life-building things. These are the things, love, patience, kindness, that build foundations of abundant life. And finally, the acts of kindness and generosity. Again, one brief study from the University of Virginia. One key factor, one key predictor of whether a couple, they can just predict whether a couple is happy. And when they're looking at a couple before they've even gotten into dialogue with them, they can predict whether a couple is happy when at least one spouse is reported to regularly perform small gestures of marital kindness and generosity for the other. Okay? That is a predictor of happiness within a relationship, when at least one is kind and generous to the other. Imagine the impact if both in a relationship were the same, right? So the success rate, the results prove true in whatever relationship it is. Acts of kindness and generosity. Just some tips in case you're going blank on how to be generous with those that you care about. Doing a chore that the other one usually does. Giving or sharing something precious to you. I had a peach. There was one peach left the other day. It was a juicy peach. I wanted the whole thing to myself. But there was a friend, and they were sitting close, and I knew I could not be kind and not offer them part of that peach. That was precious to me. I did, and it made the other person happy. All right? Your time. Willing to drop your own personal agenda, your activities, to rearrange your schedule to be available for the other person. That shows love and generosity. Affection, hug, a touch. So often when we are irritated and frustrated, we withhold affection from our children, from our spouses, from our partners. Resist that urge. You can address issues. You can address core issues that need to be dealt with constructively without withdrawing your affection or words of affirmation. You can still remain in times of peace and struggle. Share your home, open up your space to your neighbors, your friends. Sacrifice some comfort. Isn't it wonderful when someone drops you off, it's raining out, and they drop you off right at the door? Yeah. They have to walk in the rain, right? Sacrifice some comfort. Here's one we can all implement. Focus in conversation on the other person. Ask them. Be present, fully present in the moment. Tell me about yourself. I want to learn. Be curious about the person you're with. Learn from them. Set aside the phone. Stop texting. Stop looking at social media while you're having a conversation or engaged in a time together. Set that aside. Seek to learn from each other. The caveat on this one, and really for all of them, is whatever we do has to be done unconditionally. This is key, without expecting anything back in return. If we are expecting appreciation back or like acts of kindness returned or any visible impact, that it's any sign that it's making impact, if we don't receive it, it can make us bitter and resentful, if that's the equation we're looking for. And it will cause even worse problems. So again, how do we do that? It is hard when there's no evidence that it's making any difference. And some of these things you may have impact within a few days, 30 days. But when things are entrenched, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort consistently. And when you're not seeing it, you want to stop. But kindness requires commitment. And this is, again, we started with Jesus, we're ending with Jesus. And Jesus is all the way in between. What keeps us committed is when we stay connected to Jesus, right? So start your day connecting with Him and saying, I need your strength. I need your wisdom. I need your heart. I need your words. I need your ideas on how to be kind. Give me the strength. And as Gloria was sharing, in the midst of it, you're saying, God, help me. God, help me be kind.
Yes.
Romans 2:4, remember, don't you see how wonderfully kind and tolerant and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that His kindness does the work? It intends to turn us around, to turn us away from sin, to turn us away from being unkind to being kind like Him. We are not perfect. We're human beings. We are not going to do this right every day, every time, despite the best intentions. But neither are the other person in our lives. They're not perfect either. And so just as God is gracious to us and patient with us, we need to be patient with ourselves and patient with the other person. We have to remember that God forgives. And He wants us to be just as gracious with others. And it's His kindness that changes and reaches our hearts. But here we are. Here you are. God is speaking to us now.
Amen.
And He is saying, love is patient and love is kind. Change starts with you. Transformation starts with you. Abundant life, fulfillment in your relationships, harmony and peace, light and love are within our reality here and now. In Matthew 19, Jesus says, with God, all things are possible, right? And in Ephesians, I'm going to close on this, it says, now to Him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask for or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. To Him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Let's close with prayer. God, thank you. You have, as always, spoken to us. You speak to us through each other. You speak to us through the situations you bring us to during our weeks. You speak to us through our relationships. You speak to us through your words, through your Spirit. And we thank you for that, because what we hear you speaking is love. Love, 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 and keep on loving. You do not give up on us. Help us not to give up on each other, God. We thank you. We look forward to the abundant life that you promise to bring us as we step and keep in step with you. In your name we pray.
Amen.